Putriana is part of the new young democracy in Indonesia, which has only had free elections since 1999. As future leaders, the perspectives of the youth are paramount to understanding current issues. Of Indonesia's 240 million people, the median age is 28, and over half of the population is under the age of 30.
Of course, Indonesia is, one of the most important countries in the world. It's the fourth largest country. It's the third largest democracy. It's home to the world's largest number of moderate Muslims. But where did this country come from?
The Japanese occupation during World War II effectively ended 350 years of Dutch colonial rule.
The Japanese occupiers really taught the Indonesians, as well as their colleagues in Southeast Asia, that Asians could defeat these Western colonialists. And the Indonesians were empowered under a great leader called Sukarno, who was the father of modern Indonesia.
During the occupation, Sukarno returned from exile and declared the independence of Indonesia. From 1950 to 1957, Sukarno headed a liberal democracy, with the last democratic elections held in 1957, as a tenuous balance of power was shared between Sukarno and the military leader, Suharto. This alliance soon ended in 1966, and Suharto alone headed the new order until 1998.
And Indonesia went through a series of presidents as they stepped further and further towards democracy, which is what they have today.
Indonesia is now reforming to a liberal democracy. In 2004, the first ever direct presidential elections were held. Indonesia is approximately 3 times the size of Texas, but it sits in the heart of 3 million square miles of maritime activity, most strategically along the Malacca Strait. The country is a key player in regional security and is the only Southeast Asian country that is a member of the G20.
Indonesia is actually the largest economy in ASEAN. It's got a vibrant, youthful economy that I think is ready to take on the 21st century much better than many other countries in Asia Pacific.
So far, I think the road of democracy has been quite good. I can express my opinion about the government, about my own country, freely.
We are now free in what we can report. Before, it was not an official censorship, but it's like we have a gun pointed at our head all the time, and if we make mistakes, that would be the end of the newspaper, and maybe even the end of the career as a journalist.
Kalau saat ini masih dalam proses.
Today, the democracy is in transition because it is not yet effective.
Sebaik-baik mungkin bisa dijalankan di Indonesia. Korupsi itu.
Corruption in Indonesia is out of control. There are corruption practices in every level, from the lowest to the highest.
Dan menurut pendapat saya,
Government has undertaken efforts to eradicate corruption, but the perpetrators are always a step ahead.
Yes, there has been corruption. There is corruption in Indonesia. But as we all know, corruption is a 30-year game. And what many people in the world don't know is the fact that we've put more than 500 people in jail in the last 5 years, as compared to nothing the preceding 30 or 40 years.
When you build a democracy, it's going to be messy by nature. Ours is messy, the hanging Chad in Florida. Indonesia's is really messy because they don't have the institutions and the infrastructure that we have in the United States.
Education is the most important place to start if you want to get a better future, especially for children, since the future of Indonesia is in their hands. I think the important issues being faced by Indonesia today are education and jobs. There are so many people in society that do not have a chance to go to school. I know that they don't want to live like their parents. The most prominent problem facing Indonesia today is the government's lack of attention on education.
I used to propound this when I was particularly president of the U.S.-Indonesia Society, it's education. Education, education, education.
In the past 30 years, China has produced about, 250,000 PhDs, while Indonesia, during the same period, has produced only 5,000 PhDs. And I do believe that if you take a 10 to 20-year view, I think you're going to see a completely different Indonesia.
Bilateral ties have occasionally been strained due to Indonesia's political and military past. However, the United States has consistently encouraged programs to improve education, agriculture, natural resource management, and healthcare.
And we see the U.S. as a partner. If you put that in the context of a rising China, a reemergence of Japan, and a rising India.
I think that security, at the end of the day, is still an important part of how the United States sees and will continue to see Southeast Asia.
As Americans, we can't control how the Chinese are going to manage their coming out party. I think we can influence it, and a good way to influence it is to encourage like-minded nations to have influence and to empower Indonesia to do that. We've got to support them as they strengthen their institutions, because they can't be a regional and global powerhouse unless they themselves have a strong foundation.
I think the relations between the two countries at their best at the moment.
Menurut saya, masa depan Indonesia.
Now it is up to the government on how to encourage the people to obtain and utilize a good education. I wish that the future generations could reach their dreams for themselves, especially for the betterment of Indonesia.
Yang berbakat